meeting to order for Orangeville Town Council for Tuesday, June 27th. Just let me pull up my agenda here, guys. Hang on a sec.
Debbie, you gonna sing a little ditty for us while we wait? A little elevator music?
That's something you really don't want to hear.
I've been working on my dad jokes. I could do that.
Remember to put your vote in for that Sirius XM contest.
Oh,
Every
that's a good
day.
call out, Joe. Well done.
Sheila reminds me every day.
Yeah. I get a reminder.
Oh,
And you can vote more than once if you have different devices. I figured that out.
Oh yeah, okay.
Really?
Computer,
Computer,
phone, somebody else's phone.
phone,
Really?
iPad.
Okay.
We should also be voting for the Blue Jays for the All-Star game while you're at it.
That's a good, I like that
Oh,
suggestion too.
Okay.
Okay, folks, sorry, I've got the agenda up now. So let's go ahead and have a motion to approve the agenda if we could. Hold on, let me get my screen back up here. Councillor Taylor, second by Councillor Andrews, all in favor?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Any disclosures of direct or indirect pecuniary interest? Seeing none, could we have a motion to move into closed, please? Councillor Taylor, second by Councillor Post, all in favor?
Yes.
Okay, I guess we'll see you at the other link then.
See you in a bit,
Thank
guys.
you. call this meeting to order of Orangeville Town Council for June 27th, 2022. Ms. Porman-Cherry, could we start with the singing of our national anthem?
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you to David Nairn, the Artistic Director of Theatre Orangeville, for that rendition of our national anthem. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and the Odawa of the Three Fires Confederacy. This meeting is being aired on public television and or streamed live and may be taped for later public broadcast or webcast. Your name as part of the public record will be included in the minutes of this meeting. Any member of the public connecting via telephone is reminded to press *6 to mute and unmute. Please remain muted until the chair requests comments or questions from the public. Earlier tonight, we had a closed session of council. There's a recommendation that the May 30th, 2022 closed council minutes be approved, and that the confidential verbal report from Ray Osmond, acting CAO, public office holders regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees and labor relations or employee negotiations, be received, and that staff proceed as directed. Could we have a motion on that, please? Deputy Mayor McIntosh, seconded by Councillor Post. All in favor? Thank you. Could we also have a motion to receive the following minutes? This is the June 6th Council public meeting minutes and the June 13th Council minutes. Could we have a motion on that? Councillor Sherwood, seconded by Councillor Andrews. All in favor? Very good. All right, well, we'll start our presentations. We're going to welcome Mr. Rob Figliuzzi, President of Whiteman Communications. Mr. Figliuzzi, good to see you, sir.
Good to see you again, Mayor Brown. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Excellent. First of all, I joined in as there was a little bit of a dialogue about internet. I got a good chuckle about that. So I'm not too sure if we're going to go into cottage country with this particular build, but glad that we are passing some folks' homes. I did submit some material for the meeting package, but I don't need to pull it up on the screen. Tonight, really, I do plan on going off script and really just kind of touching upon the highlights that were included in the package. So as long as you don't mind a lot of me on the screen, I'll just continue that way.
Please, carry on.
Perfect, thank you. So for those that I haven't met yet, my name is Rob Figliuzzi. I'm the president of Whiteman. I understand that there have been some requests, so I am here tonight to provide an overview of Whiteman's Fiber to the Home project in Orangeville, both in terms of the project scope as well as the progress that we've made to date. Now, as mentioned, there is a 14-page overview that's included in tonight's agenda package. I'm not going to walk through that in detail. I'll just touch upon the highlights, but some of the areas of focus that I want to go through is talk a little bit about Whiteman, our history with fiber builds. I will talk a little bit about the fiber technology itself. And then most importantly, we'll talk specifically about our fiber project in Orangeville. And of course, happy to answer any questions that folks may have. So with that, the elevator pitch on Whiteman, we've been providing communication services for over 100 years, started life as an incumbent phone company in Midwestern Ontario. And since those early days, we've added internet, TV, mobility services. Our ever-expanding serving area currently stretches from Owen Sound to Stratford to Orangeville and really all places in between. We are a rather large regional player in southwestern Ontario. Lastly, about Whiteman, we are actually in fact still owned by the Whiteman family. It is brothers Paul and Blair Whiteman. They're the 4th generation of the Whiteman family to own a company, and they do own 100% of our organization. This fiber build in Orangeville, it's not our first rodeo. We've been building fiber to the home for almost 2 decades now. I don't have the facts to back it up, but as far as we know, Whiteman was the first company in Canada to completely overbuild the town with fiber. And since that time, we've constructed in 20 other communities. Today, 3/4 of our customers are fed by a direct fiber connection, either to their home or to their business. And usually, historically, when I've made these types of presentations to councils, this is where I take the time to start to explain why fiber, what's fiber about, why is fiber internet so important. But I think today everyone gets it. All of our lives today revolve around this utility that we call the internet. And actually, I have a bit of a funny story for you. This is completely true. About a week ago, I was at home. It was in the evening. I was at home and the power went out. And after about 5 seconds of sitting in the dark, my son from the basement yelled out, "Dad, the internet's out." So that seems to be where the internet sits in the grand scheme of importance, somewhere a little bit above hydro and probably just a small notch below oxygen, at least priorities when it comes to the younger generation. But maybe getting back to my point, the internet itself, it has been evolving, and as it evolves, it does demand more bandwidth, faster speeds, and a term that you hear a lot these days, latency, less and less latency. The high quality video of today is going to be virtual reality tomorrow. A Zoom meeting with your doctor today, that's going to be a virtual medical diagnosis tomorrow. Whatever speeds the internet applications of the future will demand, there's no technology better than fiber to accommodate that. And as I say that sentence, I realize I'm starting to sound a little bit like a commercial, so I'll back off from there and just simply state that fiber will be available to meet any speed you need today and tomorrow. Specifically in Orangeville, when this project was first announced a couple years ago, we called it a $56 million investment. I wish I could still say that's the case. The last couple of years, our industry has not been immune to the gravity-defying price increases that have occupied the headlines as of late, which means by the time this project is complete, it's going to be more of a $62 to $66 million investment in a fiber optic infrastructure in Orangeville. And by the way, this project is completely privately financed. There is no government assistance of any kind. The method of construction that we use, it's referred to as directional drilling. So that means that all of our fiber plant is buried underground in conduit. It means that our pedestals are buried flush to grade, so we don't leave any, we don't leave any street furniture when we roll out of a street. Everything is as it was before we got there. And we actually bury the fiber up and down both sides of every street. We do that so we don't have to go under roads. If you can visualize a cable of fiber running along a boulevard, to get to a house, and I'm oversimplifying, but to get to a house, we'll peel off a strand of fiber to take it to a house or to a business. We don't want to go under roads, so we do need to be on both sides of a street. We get asked that question quite often, why both sides? So we will be going up and down every street in Orangeville. The only exception right now is the downtown core. Downtown cores are always complicated, and I'm sure in a lot of ways it's undesirable to have drills on the main strip. So that is not part of our project today. That just basically the small strip of the downtown core. That would be a future project for us. This entire project will see 350,000 meters of fiber built in town. Obviously, that also translates to 350 kilometers, however you want to measure it. And we will pass roughly 12,000 living units and business units throughout the construction. We don't charge homes or businesses to be connected to fiber. That's another question that we get asked quite often. And aside from the obvious internet, we do provide our TV and voice services over fiber as well. Something that we get asked quite a bit as well is what's the pricing on fiber? Existing customers that we're looking to move to fiber, we don't charge a premium price for our fiber-based services. It's the same price. And overall, I'd suggest that our pricing is quite competitive in the market. Our construction commenced in the business park in Orangeville back in 2020. That was about 10, 11,000 meters of construction. Last year, we commenced our residential construction. This year, for 2022, the primary focus of Whiteman is this project in Orangeville. Our goal for 2022 is to get through 80,000 meters of fiber construction, 84,000 meters of drilling. Would love for it to be more, but over the years that we have learned that directional drilling, especially in larger centers, you tend to max out somewhere between 70 and 90,000 meters. There's just too many third parties involved in a construction project to expect any more than that. So we are targeting 84,000 this year. That means it'll take a few more years to complete this project. So we're targeting an end date of 2025. Today, that construction is south of Broadway. For 2023, the majority, if not all, the construction will be in that same area south of Broadway before we start to edge up into the northern area of that defining line of Broadway Street. Just to close off, a last couple quick hits about the project. We do use a local company, Avertex, to perform our construction. We've been using them for quite a few years now, and I do have to say they've been cheerleading for quite some time for us to take our investments to Orangeville. To minimize construction activity as much as possible, we do work with other utility providers, and any construction that is upcoming with them or vice versa will piggyback on each other's construction, again, just to minimize the level of disruption. To date, I'd suggest there actually is pretty good awareness of within the community of what our project is all about, but we do drop off letters to every home and business just before construction comes to a street. It describes what we're doing and provides phone numbers, not of the town, phone numbers of our contractor and at Whiteman in case there's any concerns, either before, during, or after the construction progress. And lastly, we do have a permanent retail location in town that assists any questions or facilitates the sign-up process. One thing that we do very well at Whiteman is make ourselves available for folks to reach out and ask any questions. So that's where our project's at. Those are the highlights that I wanted to touch. And speaking of assisting with any questions, happy to answer any if there are any.
Very good. Rob, thank you. I want to thank you for the economic development value of mid-60s of millions to being brought to our town, the great service that you are and will be providing in the future. The fact that a lot of that money is being left in town in Avertex pockets and their employees is awesome. They'll be spending the money here in Orangeville, as you well know. And the other great thing that I've noticed is this underground utility boxes. You know, we've had problems here with maintenance, unsightly tilted utility boxes from your competitors. The graffiti situation is ridiculous. So thank you. I wasn't aware that that was going to be the case until you started installing. So it's much appreciated, and it leaves the streetscape beautiful. So thank you very much. We've got a number of councillors that wish to ask questions. Just let me see here. I can get the hang on. Let me get the list here of folks up. Okay, we have Councillor Post, number one, then Andrews, Sherwood, and Taylor. Go ahead, Councillor Post.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Rob, for the great presentation. And as I mentioned before the council meeting, you are in my neighborhood right now, and I have to give kudos to the construction team. They've done a fantastic job. I know I was speaking to friends of mine on a street before mine who had some concerns and went and spoke with the construction team, and they were all excellent. They were able to answer all of our questions, and that's been the consistent message through the community. So thank you for that. You did make the comment that the downtown core was a future project, and we are in the process in the summer or going into the fall of tearing up the downtown core and replacing the sidewalks. Is there any opportunity at that time, while it's kind of already in construction mode, to have that looked at as part of that project?
Absolutely. And whenever that is the case, we would look to, if there's an opportunity there, we would look to, at the very least, put our conduit in during the time of construction, just so that's in there. We do work very closely with the town so that if there ever is an opportunity like that, we would certainly jump on board with that. I guess what we're not looking to do right now is the construction that we're doing today, that directional drilling. That is not something that at least Whiteman has planned within the downtown core, but we would certainly piggyback on any other construction going on in that area.
Ms. McKinney, you've lit up your screen. Do you wish to comment?
Thank you, and thank you, Rob, for the presentation. So just for council's awareness also that IT does work with infrastructure services when there are appropriate construction contracts underway to make sure that conduit is installed and available across the town. And Jason does provide fiber in various parts of the town, including parts of the downtown at this point. So we can have that as a takeaway. I can follow up with IS.
Excellent. Yeah, good
Thank you
point,
very much.
Councillor Post. Thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you.
Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Your Worship, and Rob, welcome to our council meeting, and thank you also for the work that Whiteman is in fact involved with here in our community. As the mayor alluded to, the economic development benefits, that's close and dear to my heart from one of my portfolios, and so the economic development is really appreciated. The other piece there that I thought was important, and you referenced the critical path of this project. I'm on the north end of your plan, so I guess we won't be eligible for some of this until 2024, crossing my fingers maybe earlier, but respectful, of course, of the installation timelines and the amount of fiber that you are installing in our community. But a couple of comments, one of which is your communications plan. Really appreciative of how thorough Whiteman has been with a number of members in the South community in Orangeville who are the recipients, are soon to be. Very thorough, very professional. And the other point that I wanted to just make a comment on was, in fact, on the timeline. But the process that installs typically take place, despite your communication. I know that there is always a resident or two that really doesn't understand how you go about it. And so your visuals that you've included not only in the slide deck for us, but I think also part of the communication provides some assurances to the members of the community on exactly what you're doing, how you're going about it, and really how it will end up. And it will very much benefit those that elect to utilize the service. But again, just a comment and thank you.
Excellent. I appreciate the feedback on that. And when it does come for us to work north of Broadway, we haven't I don't want to say we haven't designed that area yet, but we haven't decided exactly where we're going to start yet. A lot of that will be determined on where our next point of presence will be. So we're still looking to acquire a spot there, and wherever that specifically lands will dictate construction in the last couple of years of this project.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you,
Councillor Andrews and Mr. Figliuzzi. Councillor Sherwood's next, and then Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Councillor Post, for bringing that up. Being on the BIA board, my first thought was you mentioned about deferring downtown, and yet we're going to have a $1.8 million sidewalk reconstruction happen, and it would only make sense to do that at the time. So I'm happy to hear that you're going to be able to coordinate that, perhaps to do some preliminary work at least. One of the things is I did have a resident reach out to me all in a tizzy that Whiteman was coming in and tearing up driveways and boulevards and everything else. And I did reach out to Avertex, which they were phenomenal with expressing that. And I'm wondering, in your communications that you're giving to the residents, are you letting them know that you're working with a partnership with Orangeville Hydro it's actually Avertex is putting in the hydro lines. That's what's tearing up people's driveways and boulevards. You guys are actually going down and underneath, but you're getting the blame because they look at it as, oh, it's Whiteman that's doing it. And I even thought it was. So I got clarification through your office, which was fabulous in putting my inquiry back onto Avertex. And they made it clear that they're working alongside Hydro at the same time.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that you got a complaint from a resident. That was a little bit of a misfire. That exactly was an example where Orangeville Hydro was laying in some new pipe. And we use that as an opportunity to put our infrastructure in as well. Worked out well that we use the same contractor. Our requirements for construction are directional drilling, like I mentioned. Their requirement for this particular project was open trenching, and I was aware after the fact that did cause quite a bit of grief with some residents. There was a letter that did go out to residents. I guess it'd be the other party's version of an information letter, and it did reference Whiteman. I wasn't aware that we were referencing that. We would have been a little bit more proactive in that particular issue if that was the case. But once we became made aware of the letter and the Whiteman reference, I think we tied off any loops that created.
That's great, because I know there was a concern in my particular neighborhood. I mentioned before we went online that I'm on a newly constructed road, and the first thing that people are saying is, oh, my buddy over there said his driveway got lifted up and I don't want my driveway lifted up. And then we found out it wasn't Whiteman at all. It's, you know, you're working with Hydro. So that communication is very important too. So thank you very much for that. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I guess, like our mayor, I'd just like to thank you, sir, for spending your investment dollars, your capital project money on our town. I can't tell you how thrilled I am that this is going to be here. It's been a problem for our businesses, and quite frankly, now that a lot of us are working from home, it's been a problem for, you know, the rest of us as well. So you are certainly solving issues for us, and I'm very grateful. The other piece I just want to say quickly, thank you for not going through your presentation. I read it. I read it with great interest, and the fact that you just brought along the highlights, it sticks out in my mind of a way to do a presentation. So I found it incredibly interesting, and I was already up to speed on what you were going to say, but the extra pieces were certainly of value to me, and I appreciate you doing that. And I guess the third part is, I guess I'd like to complain about Councillor Post stealing my thunder with the sidewalks, but good for her for bringing that up, and same thing with Councillor Sherwood. But the last piece is, I have heard from concerned residents that, and I think it's just a misconception, but you know, it's good in a public forum to get this out. Are you going through backyards? Will you be in backyards of people's properties? Is there any need to do that? And if so, what's the process? Because some people are very defensive about that.
Yeah, and I can see why. And you know, obviously with a project of this scale, as you build the awareness within an entire community, there tends to be some misinformation. And one of our bigger challenges is to kind of keep that as corralled as possible, the actual message. The answer very specifically to your question is no, we do not need to be any backyards whatsoever. All of our construction is on the municipal right of way. It is not on any sort of private property. The only time we go into private property is when a home or business has signed up for our service, and then we take a service wire into that location. But that is only with homeowner approval. We would not go into any property otherwise.
That's great. Good. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here tonight.
And meeting rules 101, you always assume that everyone's read the package, so you don't read it from top to bottom, right?
Well, this council does.
Yeah, you're ostracized on this council if you don't, so it's a lot of peer pressure.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, Rob, thank you very much. You know, I just want to touch upon, you know, the fact that business attraction and business retention is something that Orangeville is going to have as a result of the installation of this, you know, high-speed, future-proof fiber. So we really appreciate all the work that you and your team are doing, and looking forward to 2025 when everybody's connected and using your services. So all the best. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for that. Have a great night, everyone.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving along in our agenda. Next up, we have Trudy Parsons, Managing Director for Deloitte Consulting. Trudy, welcome.
Thank you very much, your mayor, and thanks very much to council for the opportunity. I will acknowledge my colleague and leader in crime here this evening, Clark Hoskin. Clark is going to be managing the technology And we are doing a presentation, but hopefully we'll keep it short, sweet, and leave lots of opportunity for questions. So first of all, on behalf of Deloitte Canada and myself and Clark, thank you very much for entrusting us with the opportunity to work with you to complete the strategic plan for the town. This is a very exciting initiative and one that we bring extensive experience, having worked with municipalities certainly across Ontario and broader afield across Canada. Clark, perhaps if you can just go to the next slide. So what I'd like to begin with is just a quick overview of the project itself. The plan that we have proposed for this work is done over 3 phases. Phase 1 is where we're just getting started. And this is really about understanding where we are now. It was quite interesting to listen to the presenter prior to us, because I'm sure internet and connectivity is one of the things that will definitely arise as a community need, and I would suggest as probably a community priority. So it's great that we had the opportunity to actually hear the presentation and learn about how that's being approached across the township. The second phase of this work will really involve us understanding the longer term vision of where it is that we want to go. Understanding both internally within the municipality, as well as externally from the input from your community and your stakeholders. And what is that future vision for the town? What does that look like? What are the aspirations that are most important and need to be respected and honored? And then that really helps us to create what the vision might be for the town looking out, 20 to 25 years. And then the third phase of the work is really building the plan. So it's the how do we get there? What are the things that we must be focusing on? What are those areas of priority? What are the particular initiatives, actions that need consideration, both from a human resource capacity perspective, as well as from a financial perspective. So you can see the timeline for the project basically runs from June through to around February. So that will give us opportunity to engage, of course, following the municipal election in October, and ensure that should there be a shift in any members of council, we have the opportunity to engage those new council members and or returning council members to make sure that their thoughts and views are reflected in what will become the strategic plan at the end of this project. Breaking each of those phases down a little bit further, you can see here on your screen right now, we've highlighted yellow, which is our opportunity tonight to introduce ourselves. And really that is the core goal of this evening's presentation. But also to give council an understanding of the types of activities that we will be initiating across the life cycle of the project. Certainly getting an understanding of the work that has been done already. So master plans and strategic plans and departmental plans, all of the things that potentially could influence or inform where this strategy needs to focus. We'll do an updated community profile, which will give us a sense, based on the new census data that is available. And then, of course, building on previous data that is accessible to help us get a snapshot of the community, everything from its demographics and population to housing prices, etc. Then we'll move into phase 2, and this is the engagement phase. And this is where we have the opportunity to first and foremost meet with council and management. That'll happen in short order following tonight's presentation. So you will have an opportunity to meet with us, to have a conversation, working through a series of questions that will have been approved by the steering committee, helping to support the project on the staff and management side. We also, of course, want to engage with managers and frontline staff. We feel very strongly that a strategic plan needs to be owned through every level of the organization, and everyone in the organization needs to understand how the work that they do actually contributes to achieving that aspiring vision that will emerge through this process. You can see that there will be a series of workshops with council and management to ensure that there is continuous and open dialogue. Once people have had a chance to sort of ponder some of the early conversations, new ideas, perhaps deeper ideas may emerge, and we want to make sure that we're capturing all of that input. There will be a survey that will be shared with the community to gather community input. That survey will be available online, and we always ensure that it's also available in paper copy, should there be individuals in the community that would prefer to not necessarily do it through an online survey. There will be some additional follow-up interviews with some key informants. So I always identify these as individuals that have a 30,000-foot view of what's happening in the community, where the community's best opportunities may lie, what might be some of those overarching barriers or challenges that potentially could impede moving forward on the identified opportunities. So we'll have those conversations to allow for us to have a bit of that deeper conversation. We've also identified a series of workshops that will take place. And some of these workshops will be done in a virtual format. Some will be done, hopefully, if things keep going the direction that we're going, hopefully there will be an opportunity perhaps for some in-person as well. But that's still a wait and see given the COVID restrictions. There will be a report that will come out sort of following all of the work that's been completed up to this point to provide, again, council and management the opportunity to really get a sense of what is it we are hearing. You know, what's rising from the community, what's rising from internal within the municipality, where is the alignment, or is there a lack of alignment? Are there things that are coming in from one viewpoint versus the other? And if so, where do we go with that? So again, that would be informed through discussion with council. And the third phase is informed very specifically with phase 1 and 2. And this is where we, really roll up our sleeves and get into creating or drafting vision, mission, guiding principles. This will be informed earlier with that first session of council that you see there on the engagement in line in the third box there, session 1. And of course, then we'll continue to take that to build it out, conversations with management to get their sense of, the alignment of their thinking. Does the vision resonate? Does the mission resonate with the purpose of the organization? And certainly to get a sense from management of potential projects, initiatives that may align with what those priorities were that are emerging through those council discussions. And of course, the key performance indicators or the performance measurement is really about making sure that there is a system in place to actually measure what we're doing. So we want to make sure that as we're implementing implementing the identification of what those priorities and potential initiatives or projects may be, how are we going to measure whether or not we have been successful? How are we going to understand what the impact and the outcome of those particular initiatives may be? At that point, we're pretty close to having the strategy finalized. It does go back to council one more time before the final presentation. And again, this is council's opportunity to hear what it was that we heard from management, from the conversations, bring it back to council to ensure that you're comfortable with where the strategy sits before we look at getting some of that external feedback. from stakeholders, again, in the community. We want to ensure that the community can hear their voice. You know, they've given their time, they've shared their thoughts and perspectives and insights, and we want to ensure that they can see that reflected in the final document. And then, of course, the final report to be submitted along with a presentation to council for adoption of this final strategy. And I'll just take a moment, if I may, to you know, really speak to the benefits of strategic planning. You know, council and management are to be commended for undertaking this project right now, you know, as we start to wind up this term of council and we start to head into the next term of council. Having a clear sense of direction is going to be very important. And of course, as I'd indicated earlier, you know, providing new council the opportunity to revisit where the strategy is and make sure, yes, this still rings true with us, that there's nothing significant that's missing or seems out of place. And if there is, then we address that and we make sure that, you know, the strategy does reflect the viewpoints and the direction that council collectively has chosen to go in. And next slide, please, Claire. Thanks. And I've spoken to this already, but to me, this is such a critical piece of the strategic planning process. And you'll see that at the bottom of the triangle here, or the pyramid, is that personal objective. What I need to do, why should I do it? That is directed for every single individual within municipality. Every single person needs to understand how and why what they do in their day-to-day responsibilities is leading to and helping to reach that top box, which is the vision for the community. And it really supports the implementation. It supports a greater understanding of why things are being measured. This is not about a personal measurement of any one individual. It's about the collective measurement of the activities that we're doing and why they're so important in moving us towards that ultimate vision that we've created for the municipality. And I always end up talking ahead of myself, so I pretty much covered most of this. But, you know, in essence, one of the most important parts of the strategic plan is that it really does create an opportunity to align council's vision and council priorities with management and staff direction. So it gives management and staff a clear understanding of where the focus needs to be. Then they in turn can decide what are the things that we need to focus on from a day-to-day, from a project-specific viewpoint in order to achieve these priorities and goals that council have laid before us. It's a roadmap. You know, I always say that, you know, none of us plan a vacation by walking to the airport and taking the first flight that has an available seat. We make a plan. We know when we're leaving, where we're going, how we're getting there, some of the things that we're going to be doing, what's important to us to make that vacation a success. And a strategic plan is very similar to that in that it creates the roadmap for council to recognize and acknowledge and state very clearly, here are the priorities, and it creates opportunity for your management to create business plans that align with advancing that strategy forward. So it is about setting expectations and outcomes. It's about setting expectations at the community level. It's about setting expectations at the management and staff level, and certainly an opportunity for council to articulate their expectations of the things that are going to be prioritized over the life of the strategy. And at the end of all of that, it's really about, did we do what we set out to do? Did we achieve the goals that we set out to achieve? And how do we know that? What are those things that we're measuring that are giving us the evidence that we need to be able to state that clearly? And I think the last slide is to say thank you. So again, certainly appreciate the time and the opportunity on behalf of myself and Clark, and certainly happy to answer any questions through you, your worship.
Well, thank you, Trudy and Clark, for putting this together for us. Councillor Taylor, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I thought I was second there. I took your hand down, Councillor Anders. Okay. I guess I have a statement overall for council and then a question for you, Ms. Parsons. And so my statement overall for council, and I think anybody who is considering running for council in the next term, this strategic plan, this is exactly what we should be focused on in terms of what we're trying to do over the next 4 years. And I think this council did a really good job at that on balance. And it's something that we need to continue on with and even do better in the next term in terms of, how does everything that we do dovetail in a strategic plan? And if it doesn't, then the answer is we shouldn't do it. And then this should drive things. So I guess my questions for you, Ms. Parsons, is we're working right now on our official plan. We've got a little committee that meets and we're going over where we're heading towards. How do you see those two documents? They differ in my mind, but I think one just enables the other one, but maybe you could talk to how you see those two documents marrying up and the best way to move forward.
Thank you very much for that question. I'll take a stab at it, and then Clark, maybe if you want to add, please feel free to do that. So the strategic plan for me certainly needs to take into consideration the official plan, because that's really the document that sets the stage for how the community is going to grow, where it's going to grow, what might be some of the barriers or restrictions that you need to work within. The strategic plan to me is the overarching document. It's the vision for the community, but it can create a vision and a direction for the community that steps outside of what that official plan is stating. So there needs to definitely be conversation and communication as those plans are being developed. It sounds like some of that might be happening simultaneously. And if there is, then we would want to, again, that's an opportunity for us to get insight from the management that may be involved in that official plan process. Clark, did you want to just add anything to that?
Sure, Trudy, and through the mayor to council, I'd just like to add that the official plan is one example of many documents and strategies and plans that the municipality works on that all should be aligned with the corporate strategy. Everything from the asset management to recreation master plan to economic development strategy, you name it, plus internal corporate plans, all should be in alignment. So it's good to know about these, and we'll certainly be looking through them all as we start the project.
Thank you. Councillor Andrews.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, Ms. Parsons and Mr. Clark. Thank you for being a part of our meeting tonight. I'm very familiar with Deloitte, having in my private sector and public sector outside of council, having had a number of strategic plans and sessions conducted with your firm. So I'm very familiar with what you do, and you do a great job at it. We are fortunate to have you lead us through this, and strategic plans are only as good as those that adopt it and understand it. And I think that is a critical point for those that might be viewing. Those of us on council, we're just one group that will be involved with this. So when you talk about, the 30,000 foot view, I think will be critical, as you outlined, is the connection to some of those community stakeholders. I know that many of us who sit around this council table have had the opportunity of being involved with a number of committees. And so we do have some key stakeholders that I know that would appreciate the opportunity, but we also have members of our community who I know that may not be a part of committees, who will also be very, very important as part of it. The one point that I wanted to share also is what I call the mirror reflection research. You may have heard of it, may not have. There's kind of different ways of describing it. But this is where internally in an organization where, and I was really glad to hear you say this, that every single person of an organization is important as part of what the outcome will be. It doesn't matter if it's the existing council, the future council, whoever is part of that, even departmentally, but it is every single person from the frontline customer service to the CAO to points in between. And in having that engagement will end up determining what this 5-year strategic plan will be. So I'm looking forward to the participation in whatever capacity that ends up being. But I think our community stakeholders, whomever they will be, will provide some input that will be valuable too as well. So again, thank you for providing us with this introduction tonight.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Councillor Andrews. Mr. Osmond.
Thank you, Your Worship. I won't take much time. I just want to, it would be remiss of me, I just wanted to take a moment to recognize and acknowledge our leader our guiding light, if you would, Ruth Phillips, Manager of Economic Development Culture. She's the leader on the strat plan internally. She's done a lot of legwork on the RFP and getting Duluth involved in this team of Trudy and Clark. You're absolutely correct, Councillor Andrews, stakeholders and all these kinds of guys behind the scenes. Ruth has really been out beating all the bushes, make sure we don't miss anybody. But I want to thank her very sincerely for all of her work and tenacity getting all this moved forward quickly. And she's working with the leadership team as a steering group, but just wanted to reach out and say thank you to Ruth on behalf of all the staff and the team that she's working with. And I'm looking forward to working on the strategic plan with Clark and Trudy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Osmond. Thank you, Ruth, for all your work on that. If there are any other questions for Mr. Hoskins or Ms. Parsons, councillors? No? All right. Well, thank you for updating us today. Really appreciate it. And we'll be speaking soon, I suspect, yes, individually as well as in a group. So thank you.
Thank you very much to council.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.
All right, moving on to item 11.3 on our agenda. We have Lori, is it Balcerek or Balcerek, Lori?
Balcerek.
Balcerek, there you go.
Balcerek, yes.
Balcerek.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you for correcting me. Landscape Architecture Manager with GSP, and some exciting developments here with respect to our proposed Rotary Park redevelopment. So,
Thank
Lori,
you.
welcome, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Brown, and good evening, everyone. I'm going to just share my screen here. I'll start the slideshow because I do have a presentation prepared. We'll see if this works. Can everybody see that?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So as Mayor Brown alluded to, this is the Rotary Park redevelopment project, and I'm just going to go through the project process and the outcomes of our findings. The project overview and outline as we have here. We will go through the project overview, the process, background documents that were reviewed, the inventory and analysis of the park, opportunities and constraints, the stakeholder engagement, public engagement. We'll go through the concept plans that were developed, the final concept plan, and show you a few conceptual perspectives, and then talk about the estimated costing. So the project overview, I just wanted to say a synopsis of the purpose and objectives of this project is as follows. GSP, in partnership with the town of Orangeville, engaged in a detailed evaluation of Rotary Park to review the existing park design and functionality. This included the purpose and objectives as outlined here, number one through 3, the review of the existing physical site conditions and park elements, the review of the current programming with a focus on identifying the gaps in services to the community, and then review of relationships of the existing elements within the park. There was an extensive engagement with stakeholder groups and the public over 7 months from August 2021 to March 2022 to establish and reinforce the needs of the community. Following that, 3 preliminary concepts plans were created outlining alternatives for the park, and this identified the priorities for enhancement and cost information for capital budgeting. The future park design goals were to create connectivity to the Orangeville Trail system, connecting to Island Lake Conservation Area, incorporating a multi-use loop and summer event plaza, and various upgrades to the sports fields, the tennis venue, accessible play areas and facilities. The resulting plan is in alignment with the recommendations of the Recreation and Parks Master Plan. And something that we came up with at the beginning of our quest here was to provide a vision for the park. So during stakeholder engagement, we did review the 5 items to the right. The fact that the park will need to be safe, accessible and inclusive, comfortable, attractive, and flexible in all seasons. And this was reinforced with the stakeholder engagement and public consultation that we conducted. So the project process, in phase 1, we assessed the current conditions of the park. We did have a startup meeting with the project steering committee on site, and we provided the assessment of the current physical conditions, including the connections, walkways, facilities, sports fields, etc. The second phase of our research was to conduct stakeholder and public engagement. The first round of consultation included stakeholder engagement with individuals from the municipality as well as user groups, and then public consultation was conducted, PIC number 1, where we posted questions online. I'll get into that in more detail through this presentation. We provided the complete assessment that we had conducted and provided that information to the public for their feedback. Then phase 3 was Phase 3 was the detailed concept design, and we went through the second round of consultation where we developed 3 design concepts that was pared down to 1, and that was provided to the public for their consultation in March of 2022. Following that, we prepared the preliminary costing and the priorities for implementation, and then from that created a final report. Some of the background documentation that we engaged was included the Recreation and Parks Master Plan, Wayfinding Master Plan, Cycling and Trails Master Plan, Cultural Master Plan, and Tourism Strategy and Action Plan. With respect to the Recreation and Master Plan, there were some highlighted items that we considered, such as upgrading amenities, including spectator seating and the pavilion, adding fields or diamonds to accommodate tournament play. These were all items that were outlined in the Recreation and Master Plan. Removing sports field and creating a town hub with an outdoor event space and skating trail. And the facilities assessment in that report included recommendations such as adding a ball diamond as well as tennis and pickleball courts, considering upgrading and supporting amenities such as washrooms, spectator seating, and a pavilion. So the next step was that we conducted a site inventory and analysis. So the existing conditions that we reviewed included the park access. There was a main entrance. The main entrance to the park is vehicular, and these were items that we showed during our stakeholder engagement through images that were collected during our site inventory analysis. So park access is mainly from 2nd Street, and there's one driveway access, and it's primarily vehicular. The parking lot is an existing parking lot with no delineation of spaces. It's surrounded by posts in this area here, surrounded by posts and chains, used over the winter by local residents for overnight parking, and the overflow parking will often use the commercial lots to the north. The playgrounds, there are 3 playground elements. They are located between Idlewild and Rotary Park, so they're a bit disjointed and straddle between the 2 parks. The tennis courts and facility buildings, the Orangeville Tennis Club is based here. They have 4 courts, and they are in need of repair. The lighting is outdated and needs to be upgraded. And the tennis club did report that there was difficulty accommodating both tennis programs and league activity with a high demand for weekday evenings, and they would like additionally to have 2 to 4 courts to alleviate the demand. There are also upgrades required for the court surfaces, the fencing, the lighting, and seating. There's a skateboard park in the back, located at the northwest corner of Rotary. It's the only skateboard park in Orangeville. There is a Desire line from the northwest corner out to the adjacent parking in the commercial development. It's out of sight and out of view from individuals that are entering the park. A soccer field is located within the park, oriented in north-south orientation with limited seating at the center line of the field itself. The south side has a planted berm, which does create opportunity for additional seating. There's access from the south parking lot, but there's no defined connection. And oftentimes the individuals will use the break in the fence to park to the north. And the north has a planted edge of Manitoba maples. The baseball fields, there are 2 baseball fields used by local leagues and the general public. There's no formal walkway leading to these fields, and there are bleachers on concrete pads for spectators. The fields are oriented in such a way that balls do occasionally leave the south field and enter into the north field. Which is a bit of an issue. The trail, the George Douglas Trail, runs along the east side of the park. It's a 1.6 meter, 1.6 kilometer multi-use trail that is paved asphalt. It is in not in excellent condition, and there is no lighting, and there are some benches along the trail. So that's some of our first initial observations that we shared with the stakeholder and public engagement. So during the initial public engagement, opportunities and constraints were collected from online survey participants as part of the PIC. We had 90 respondents, and they were provided graphics of the park which outlined constraints and opportunities. The following questions accompanied the graphics. They were asked, question 1, based upon your review of the panel boards that were provided online, do you generally agree with the preliminary observations and opportunities for the park as noted? And they were to answer yes or no. And then the second question was to respond to, do you feel any significant opportunities have been missed, which should be considered? So we asked them to expand on what our observations were. The question 3 was actually related to constraints. So we asked, based on your view of the panel boards, do you generally agree with the preliminary observations and constraints for Rotary Park? They were to answer yes or no. And then question 4 was, do you feel any significant constraints have been missed, which should be considered? And then question 5 was, from your own perspective and experience, what do you feel are the top 3 priorities for improvement that should be addressed through the redevelopment of Rotary Park? As you can see here, of the 90 respondents, the constraints included unsafe driving in the lot, unsafe leisure areas, not enough parking, play structures more accessible, separated play areas, the north end commercial parking, a disconnect between Rotary and Idlewild, and the baseballs landing outside of the diamond. So many of these items were already pointed out during our original analysis of the site, but this just reiterates that these were concerns that came up from the public. The opportunities that we had come up with, some of these were brought forward through our initial observations, and they included the possibility for improved site access and circulation, so defining pedestrian crossings, extending the trail west through park frontages to connect with Idlewild, providing formal access to the west for a direct pathway connection, access to the north of the park, so that entrance that actually is between Idlewild and Rotary Park, to provide paths to increase access for players, to get to the ball fields and the soccer field, to extend the existing walkways to bleachers so that they have a barrier-free path of travel, and having a pavilion, creating accessibility to the pavilion and making it more inviting. Some of the program elements that we saw as opportunities included defining the parking lot, lowering the planted berm for open sight lines, opportunities to expand bleachers, reorganizing park features to provide a central element in pedestrian connectivity, consolidated playground elements, additional seating throughout, defined pedestrian routes, and cycling facilities such as bike racks and multi-use paths. There are also vegetation opportunities in the park to consider further defining the edge of the parking lot with landscaping to buffer the swale and enhance the Second Avenue entrance. So to make a destination and a kind of you are here defined by planting, considering opening views to the stormwater management pond and the adjacent property to increase natural surveillance, and then tree planting to increase the tree canopy and frame walkways, as well as cleaning and regrading the north edge to improve visibility, as it's full of Manitoba maples, which are sometimes a weaker species, can be hazards, and they're not the most desirable of all species. So during our stakeholder engagement, this was, in general, it was the user groups as well as the city staff. You can see a number of the items that came to light during our review of the items that I've just outlined. So some of the bigger items that came up were accessibility, walkway improvement, pickleball, and safety, which is in line with our original vision for the park. Several meetings were held to accommodate staff availability, and then consultation focused on furthering assessment and understanding of the park. GSP provided study extents, preliminary observations and impressions of the park, opportunities and constraints, and these observations guided discussion toward understanding priorities for the redevelopment of programming changes in this park. Feedback was collected from stakeholders and user groups, which included city staff, Orangeville Tennis Club, Orangeville Minor Soccer Club, Orangeville Ball Clubs, such as Slow Pitch and Minor Baseball, as well as the Credit Valley Conservation Authority. So public engagement and feedback, there were responses. These responses are the questions that we asked. Question number 5 was the top 3 priorities that they saw, that the individuals in the public consultation saw for the park. And this included adding, improving play structures for kids, paving and improving the parking lot, improving the ball diamonds, improving washrooms, and the path connectivity. So from this information that was gathered, we developed 3 concept plans. So option A, as you can see, just get to my notes here. Option A included, so all of these have the similar features that they're seen throughout all 3 of these concepts, is that they took into consideration better pedestrian connections, creating a central hub within the park, additional trees, and features such as seating. Where they differ is that option A included additional tennis courts, the new addition of pickleball courts, reoriented ball fields, with one field increasing in size, and the relocation of the skate park. Option B included keeping the original park facilities in place while adding tennis and a central hub pavilion, /pavilion, and then improvements would be made to the existing facilities, but this would be an economical solution to providing park improvements. Option C includes the reorientation of the ball field with the loss of the second field, an additional minor soccer field, and this concept also incorporated the winter multi-use loop that would double as a walking running loop for park users. So once these concepts were created, they were reviewed by a staff, and we developed the best case scenario using all the best features from these 3 concepts and came up with a final concept, which is the one shown here. So the features from all concepts were gone through and combined into a final concept, which includes enhanced pedestrian connectivity, a trail system through the site connecting parks, Idlewild and Rotary, and park elements, connecting park elements. The paved parking is included, as well as one new tennis court. The tennis courts themselves have been shifted to the north and leave space for parking, as well as the proposed pickleball courts. There's a consolidated play area, which is now essentially straddling the line between Rotary Park and Idlewild. However, there's better connectivity leading from 2nd Avenue all the way north through the park and past the playground. There's also an entertainment structure within the loop. There's a pavilion, the entertainment structure, and a multi-use loop for winter and summer use, as well as additional trees. So this is kind of an artist rendering, artist perception of what these spaces would look like through the summer months and the winter months. So this path is a 250 meter, approximately a 250 meter loop. So, 4 times doing the loop, you would have a kilometer completed. So we feel that individuals there for a ball game, or just there to actually use the park instead of being there for a sports event, would be able to use this path in all the seasons. So the estimated costing, the project total is $11,297,000 and $11,297,268. And I just wanted to highlight some of the higher ticket items. The multi-use loop is the highest ticket item in the costing estimate, and that is because it would include the ice resurfacing machinery. It includes mechanical. The loop itself would be a refrigerated loop, so it would extend into shoulder seasons. And there's also a building that would house the structure, the resurfacing equipment, as well as mechanical. And there's also electrical connections that are required. The second biggest ticket item would be the electrical upgrades. So in moving some of these elements, we'd end up having to move lighting. I know that the lighting for the tennis courts is outdated and needs to be updated. The most updated lights in the park are located at the skate park, and it was discussed that that would be the most appropriate to continue with in the rest of the park. There's also another big ticket item includes regrading removals, and that includes excavation and removal of the tree berm, tree removal, subgrade prep, spread and fine grade of topsoil, shifting of the soccer field, and removal of the existing paving materials and utilities. Two of the other big ticket items include the tennis and pickleball, as the tennis would have to be removed as it's shifting to the north. And then the other big ticket item would be site access and circulation, as there are a number of, first of all, there's asphalt paving for the parking lot and a number of connecting pedestrian trails throughout the site. So in summary, a detailed evaluation of Rotary Park and its existing spatial programming to develop alternative park programming options was the exercise that we had gone through. The evaluation reviewed existing park spaces, as mentioned, and we went through site analysis and took that information forward to do stakeholder engagement with the general public from August 2021 to March 2022. Based on the feedback received from the key stakeholders and town staff, an updated concept plan for Rotary Park and recommendations were prepared with a related cost estimate. In adopting this plan as proposed, we will be developing a park that meets the initial vision of this project. The end goal is to accommodate all users and not just prioritize one particular group, as many of the stakeholder groups did have a vested interest in their own use of the park. This redevelopment does creates greater opportunity for the entire community as a whole, and the park has been designed to be a destination in the town of Orangeville. Thank you.
All right. Well, that's an exciting and it's an exciting and aggressive plan. So
it is an aggressive plan.
Thank you for that presentation. I know some councillors wanted to ask some questions. I'm curious about the very large contingency number there. I presume this has to do with the current state of affairs with respect to supply chain and fluctuating costs. Is that correct?
That's accurate. On the past projects, we had had a 10% contingency. We've raised this to 30% because of the volatility of the market. There have been so many elements of construction and development that have gone up in price that we have seen even more recently something, it started out, we saw it during COVID that fencing and wood was, there's these hot topic items that just kind of out of nowhere will end up costing more. And right now we've seen it even in landscape plants, which wouldn't expect to see those go up in price. But so we wanted to just make sure that we're accommodating and
Very good. Okay, Lori, I'm going to call on Deputy Mayor McIntosh and then Councillor Andrews. Go ahead.
All right.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. I don't have a question for Lori. I just want to say it's a good job. You seem to have encapsulated all the groups. Some of the other ones where you left out the soccer or things like that, it was kind of worrying, but it looks like you've got everything contained. My question, however, is for Mr. Osmond. I was wondering about the tennis club. What sort of agreement does the town of Orangeville have with the tennis club itself?
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, to Deputy Mayor McIntosh. It's a good question. Actually, your agreement is on a 10-year basis. Your current agreement is up for renewal. It will be discussed in this year into 2023. So it's a good question. The current agreement, they have a facility, of course, and they have tennis courts, and then the agreement would give them lease access to those spaces. We maintain the actual, if you would, the infrastructure of the space or the capital cost of the space, but anything that happens on the site, they maintain it. They run programs on it. They do allow public access to courts during the summer season that we've negotiated in the contract. But it's a good question because it is something we've preliminary discussions with tennis on, and we will be opening up that contract discussions in the next few weeks and months.
Okay, thank you. Good to hear.
Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Your Worship. I see that our guest, had to be readmitted back to the meeting. So a question that is actually posed to both her and Mr. Osmond. First and foremost, my comment, a lot of work, and I do stress a lot of work has gone into this plan. And, upon review of this, both not only this presentation, but also the staff report, it highlights the importance, as the Deputy Mayor has indicated, to the various stakeholders that have participated in the dialogue. I do like seeing the phased-in recommendations, and I guess we'll be getting to that when the staff report comes up in our council agenda. But Lori and or Mr. Osmond, one of the stakeholders that I'm going to highlight, I am curious to know if in fact they were consulted. This was in fact the CVC. From the perspective that council may recall a few weeks ago, we did have a rather ambitious presentation talking about some of their strategic plan and their ambitious revitalization of the Island Lake location. Not to indicate in any way, shape, and form that there are duplications of things that are going on, but there are some similarities to certain things. Is not highlighting the sports component, but there is that recreational component that is in fact found with what is eventually going to be what is potentially their implementation plan of that idea. But what I'm getting to is, was the CVC consulted to see if there are any potential synergies, avoiding duplication? Again, just from my seat, those one of the questions that I wanted to pose.
Thank you. That's the Credit Valley Conservation Authority.
Yes,
that is correct.
Yes, we did meet with them. They were at one of the stakeholder engagements, and they didn't seem to have any issues with what we, during our original stakeholder engagement collection of data, they didn't seem to have any concerns moving forward. They did discuss the ditch that runs along 2nd Avenue and didn't seem to have any, they didn't want anything adjusted or changed with respect to how it's functioning. So that was their only concern that they'd brought up.
But were you aware of what they have planned?
That was not, no.
Okay. All right. Mr. Osmond's hand up.
Yes, okay. Just for clarity purposes, the CVC did complete the master plan on Island Lake, of course, while this was in progress. So at the end of the day, you're absolutely correct. Though next phase for us, council, would be we'll bring back the various elements in this particular master plan or redevelopment plan. And if there's something that would be potential duplication because of Island Lake's moving on their project, then we can identify at that time. But primarily, the destination park we're looking at here in Rotary, as we know, Rotary is a major park in town. It's designed for that perspective to basically, first of all, to cater to residents of the town, and then to accommodate destination purposes, things like a skating loop, so that people come in and actually a tourist attraction, if you would, to this side of Island Lake, if you would, close to the downtown. if you look at what's happening in Island Lake in terms of a skate trail, just that in particular, it's a natural trail, not an artificial trail. The issue we have with natural is that we're not getting, with climate change, we're not getting a consistent cold period or freeze period, -10 consistently for a long period of time. And what the artificial ice surface does for you is gives you a long season. And as Laurie alluded to, you've got the shoulder season, so you can go a lot longer. And you have a skate trail that's there consistently for so many months during the winter season. So that'll be a big difference. But for the most part, the sport facility is still the major focus of this park. And then as she actually introduced, is that we want to make sure we also provide programs and so on and so forth for all the population. So it's not just about sport, it's about walking, it's about fitness, it's about going in for playground, play structure, and also the skate trail, walking on that trail. And you notice, it didn't get into much, but there's an entertainment piece that's been introduced here on the small scale entertainment piece, which gives you the benefit of having small scale entertainment activities in the skate loop area that accommodates a lot of different things you can do in the long term. So that's it's a growth piece for the downtown and for tourism itself.
Mr. Osmond, thank you. I always get the answers I need when you provide them. So very thorough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ray, I haven't, gone through all of the documentation, including your report, the fine-tooth comb, but I wonder if you could tell us and tell the public what kind of timeline the construction would be if council did approve this going forward.
Thank you, Your Worship. First off, we do have in a report, of course, one of the low-hanging fruit pieces, if you would, is the play structure piece. The play structure is in high demand. The play structure right now is at end of life. So that's one of our first priorities, is to get the play structure going. And I know that Don Voisey from the Rotary is probably coming right behind us here. But Don will have a few comments. And they are very keen, excited about moving forward in a partnership role to really get involved with launching the planning, detailed planning, if you would, on the play structure itself. Not just the play structure, but amenities around that playground and some of the nuances you could do with that particular playground. Things that are in the trending piece now, from a natural playground piece to other sorts of amenities. The all accessibility side of things, the inclusivity piece and all that kind of thing has to be kind of incorporated into that plan. So while you're seeing a big overview of the actual Rotary Park itself, we want to be able to take elements. So our first priority, Mr. Mayor, is to actually do the play side, the playground side, and then move into 23, 24, 25 on some of these large budget pieces. If I were given a major wish box right now, I would take the skate loop because I know what it can do in terms of tourism and attraction. There are some other low-hanging pieces that we can do with the moving fields and things like that. But it's going to be a bit of a challenge. One of the things that the consultant GSP has done here, it was quite a challenge actually. We have a deficiency in land, and they've tried to incorporate as much as possible into a land piece we have here. It's not a large footprint, so we managed to squeeze in as much as we can for all the different groups that need their bit of change or improvement. But at the same time, try to introduce some new pieces as well. So I think they really did a good job in capturing that, and Charles Cosgrove, manager of facilities and parks, is working with this team for the last number of months. And it's been a struggle from time to time, trying to make sure trying to make good decisions to move this forward. But in terms of timeframes, we'd like to have a project on the table, 1 or 2 projects on the table in 23, 24, 25, and by 26, I'd like to have a lot of this park off your docket, if you would. Okay,
so 3-year construction, roughly, costs spread out over that period,
depending on budget.
Okay. Very good. Councillors, any further questions at this moment? No? Okay. Well, Laurie, I want to thank you very much for your presentation, and I'm sure we'll be talking again in short order. But thank you. Thank you for giving this again to us.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Moving on, our next presenter is Mr. Don Voisey. Don, welcome. Don's a past president and current secretary of the Rotary Club of Orangeville. Mr. Voisey, how are you, sir?
Excellent, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, members of council and town staff, thank you for this opportunity to speak in support of the proposed redevelopment concept for Rotary Park. The Rotary Club of Orangeville spearheaded the establishment of Rotary Park back in the 1980s, transforming the town dump into a great community park. This effort involved a great deal of input and sweat equity for sure by many people, including particularly two of them, Doc Gillies and Carl Edelbrock. Shortly after its opening, Rotary Park saw performances such as the RCMP musical ride, and the usage of the park has grown over the years. It's centrally located and extremely well used. In 2005, the Rotary Club of Orangeville initiated and helped achieve the completion of the skateboard park and shelter at Rotary Park. Again, it's well used and the site of several events and competitions. Later in 2015, we did the same for the splash pad in the west end of town at Fendley Park, incidentally named after former Rotarian Doug Fendley. I think we can all agree that there are a few tired aspects to Rotary Park after all these years. So this concept to update so many different parts of the park is most welcome. The Rotary Club of Orangeville is pleased to have been asked to participate in the design process as it was developed, and is excited to see the many improved facilities, including some great new features. Thank you to town staff for including us in the discussions and incorporating some of our ideas during that process. We certainly support this concept plan and trust that council will approve it, but most importantly, implement some of the features as soon as possible, as Mr. Osmond has indicated. Hate to see this thing get through, go on the shelf and nothing happens. So I think it's important that we really start something. We do understand that it's a multi-year endeavor, but will certainly be most welcomed by our community in the years to come after those years. Rotary is already working with town staff on one of the features, hoping that it become one of the first features to be completed to kick off the implementation of the concept plan, as Mr. Osmond has alluded. Thank you for your attention to our comments. We look forward to your decision. Don Voisey, past president, Rotary Club of Orangeville. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Yeah, it is really very exciting. So many different users are touched by these improvements, from soccer to baseball to skating. The new and upcoming sport of pickleball has been dealt with there. Expansion of the tennis club, music. A lot of things have been touched upon that are all close to our heart here in Orangeville. So it's exciting, and I think we council's got to digest the cost and how that's going to be dealt with over time. But I think it's something that we want to move forward with, and we'll be looking forward to further questioning when the report gets presented shortly. Councillor Sherwood, do you have a comment or a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Voisey, and particularly to the Rotary Club of Ontario. I have a question for you. You've disappeared on us.
Oh, I can come back.
Okay, thank you. Again, I want to thank Rotary Club. They've done significant things in our community throughout the years, and I didn't hear any talk of any type of financial commitment from the Rotary Club. I know you do many fundraisers and provide many things throughout the community. So is there a future commitment for the Rotary Club to be doing fundraising and helping support maybe some of these initiatives for this project?
I would say it's very early at the moment, but we've conveyed to town staff that we want to get involved. It is Rotary Park. We would like to focus some fundraising in the future years. Our biggest fundraiser is RibFest that's coming up July 15, 16, 17. Please attend.
Can't wait.
If council were to approve this within today, tomorrow, whatever the time frame is, we would certainly like to start mentioning that at RibFest. We can't do so until then. And of course, until we know the detailed costing of the element that we're interested in and the timetable for it, we really can't present that to our club for final approval. We do have approval in principle from them that this is the highest or close to the highest on the priority list of what we do want to support in the future.
Much appreciated. We're not looking for the $11 million by any means, but a little bit of dough here and there is really nice.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Voisey, thank you for joining us. we will, if there's no further questions, council, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night, all.
All the best. Okay, moving on to 12.1. This is the staff report, Rotary Park redevelopment plan, CMS 2022-008. It's a recommendation that this report regarding the redevelopment of Rotary Park be received, and the council approve in principle the Rotary Park redevelopment plan prepared by the GSP group, and that staff be directed to bring forward Rotary Park plan recommendations within future budget processes, and that staff be directed to work in partnership with the Orangeville Rotary Club to begin planning the new proposed playground within the Rotary Park redevelopment plan and report back to council during the 2023 budget process on final layouts and budget impacts. Could we have a motion on this recommendation, please? Deputy Mayor McIntosh, second by Councillor Andrews. Mr. Osmond, did you want to weigh in again, sir, and just give your Cole's notes on this before we have council weigh in?
Thank you, Worship. As you alluded to earlier, it is an aggressive, ambitious plan. It's timely. As Mr. Voisey pointed out, I mean, they started the park back in the 80s, and actually, it's quite interesting that they transformed what used to be a landfill site into a pretty high-end, usable park space that's been delivering a lot of service over all these years since back in the 80s. And it's time to do a redevelopment plan. The redevelopment plan addresses not just now in terms of what's required today, but some futuristic view on what needs to be presented to the community. It also gives you an opportunity to address some recreation, yes, for all the residents and visitors that come to Orangeville on a regular basis. But as you know, when you put on the tourism hat, then we look at our tourism master plan, our tourism strategic plan. One of the big things is how do you get people come to the downtown? One of the beauties about Rotary Park is its close proximity to the downtown. It is within walking distance. The parking itself adds to that particular amenity because it provides a place to park, undertake some activity in the skate loop, if you would, and at the same time just cross the street and walk up to the various restaurants and entertainment facilities on the street known as Broadway. So it's got a real location going for it. It is, of course, also adjacent to Island Lake Park. And as you all know, it's been an issue over the years where people use Rotary Park to park and go across Island Lake, and vice versa. People go into Island Lake and find themselves coming across the street to Highway 10 to go into Rotary Park and go into the amenities on the west side of Highway 10. So the park is really all about destination, yes, but it's also a great location for lots of things to move forward. It is, like I said earlier, it's one of the major parks. We need a great plan to work with. This is a great plan to work with. We can't undertake all this in 1 or 2 years. It's just too much for everybody to chew off. But at the end of the day, I think the recommendations we have put before council are the ones that we can really work with. And it gives the council the opportunity to address each item one by one as they come in. And if we need to change things, this is a project or a plan that you can adapt, and you can you can pivot here and there if you would to make some changes to address any new issues that might come up. I know that when you look at play structures change from week to week, year to year. As we address issues in inclusivity and accessibility in our community, we've already looked at different ways that we can really approach some of our play structures and some of the approaches to the play structures. So this plan, I got to say, I'm pretty excited about it. I think staff have done a fantastic job working with GSP. And I think this council has got a good plan in front of them, and you'll get a chance to address it in the budget process. And I think it's the best way to approach it. Finally, on the Rotary group, one more time, the partnership with Rotary is pretty critical for us. It's not just about doing one project or this project or that. The fact is, these guys were there first. And I think as a legacy to Rotary, I think this is a wonderful legacy, and we're now going back to the plan and redevelop it. And it's really great to have those guys working with us in collaboration. And I know we're going to work on the play structure starting off because it is dear to their hearts as well. So I think that's a good start. But the actual number, given the environment we're in now, we need to make sure we bring a good number to council for 23, and that way we can address the funding requirements in 23 and not right now.
I see Councillor Sherwood's lit up her screen. One quick question, though, I want to ask either yourself, Mr. Osmer, perhaps the treasurer. You know, the town's growing, and as we grow and new residential units are developed, development charges are paid to the town. are we going to be able to dip into our development charges to pay for some of this work? Madam Treasurer, are you on board?
Good evening,
Oh.
Mr. Mayor. The treasurer is not here this evening.
Oh, okay. Ms. McKinney, if you could comment on that question.
Perhaps I can circle back with both planning as well as the treasurer on that particular topic.
Okay, fair enough. But I would hope that this is a, you know, an amenity that is a requirement of the town's growth. And as we grow, we spend money on these things. I would hope that some of the money could be coming from development charges. So we'll wait to hear from that in the future, but it certainly crossed my mind as we were looking at that large number tonight. All right, first of all, I've got Councillor Sherwood and then Councillor Post. Go ahead, Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. Through you to Mr. Osmond. Great concept considering the space that we have to deal with. It would have been nice to see a splash pad and a outdoor swimming pool in there, but we can't have everything, can we? One of the things I did notice in the draft design was the added picnic and shade structures, which is always great because we always seem to search those out, but they all seem to be congested in the southwest corner. Is there not an opportunity to have some, geez, I don't have the design right in front of me, but they all seem to be, like I say, down in that one particular area focused. Can there not be some more by the soccer fields or a little bit more south by the skateboard park, some over by, I'm just looking at it going, why are they all congested in that one particular area and not kind of spread out to give families opportunity to spread out?
Mr. Osmond.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Sherwood. That's a good observation. In fact, one of the first priorities with the shade structure was to have the shade structures enough shade space near the play structures because of the younger families and children in the area. So that was one of the initial reasons for it. But if you noted, you won't see the actual design yet. But these are single design shade structures. So it's an excellent question. In actual fact, we will probably see these popping up all over the park. So they're designed, if you would, like a one bench, one picnic table with a shelter over the top of that. So a smaller scale. So it's very portable from that sense. So you can move them all over the different areas of the park. And the reason we put it there is because when we were actually doing the actual layout of the play structure, we didn't want to lose track of having the shade structures, which is a big issue for us at Finley and at Every Kids. But the problem we have now post-COVID was that we had everybody under one shade. And so what we did now, we're going to break them up and we're going to create pods, if you would, of shade throughout the park. We just want to capture it in the design so we don't forget, make sure we get that in the park. But our first initial response was making sure we had it for the play structure for families and small children, is to be able to get the shade as quickly as possible near the play structure. That was the immediacy of the design.
Okay, and yes, I was glad that they redid it so that rather than have a big shade structure with 4 picnic tables, they did them individually, which I think is a great idea. So that's just one of the things that I noticed, that they just seem to be always congested in one area and not really, but the fact that there could be an opportunity to pop them up somewhere else, that's great. Thank you, Mr. Osmond.
Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. Councillor Post.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm so pleased with this concept plan. I think it's going to be a wonderful addition, and I think it will be a true destination park. In saying that, I'm glad to see that the playground is going to be the first one addressed, and that we can have the opportunity for a new playground structure. That one definitely is old and tired. My family uses it often as we spend a lot of time at the Ball Diamonds. And with that being said, I'm really hopeful that we can use this opportunity to find a really unique play space to put there, rather than kind of one of the cookie cutter structures that go up in smaller neighborhood parks. In order to make it a destination, I think we have an opportunity to do something very cool and very unique in here. So I'm looking forward to seeing those design concepts, and I hope that we can do something very unique and creative there. There were a couple of kind of design specific questions that I have about the final concept, and some of them might just be missed from the drawings. But there was a few items that were identified as key priorities from the stakeholder groups that I just don't see in the final concept. And the first one is enhanced seating at the Ball Diamonds. I actually don't see any seating identified at the Ball Diamonds. In the kind of current state pictures, there were pictures of where the bleachers are, and in this state there isn't. So I'm hopeful that we're going to do something that's a bit, different and a little more nice for families to use at the Ball Diamonds, because they are in a bit of rough shape when it comes to bleachers and the seatings. There was also a comment made about enhancement to washrooms, and I don't see any addition of any other washrooms. Is it still just going to be the ones in the tennis club building or the side of that concrete building that are going to be used, or will there be an additional access? I worry that in the winter time specifically, as we'll be using an enhanced skating loop, that's an awful trek to get back to those washrooms for families. And also just bike racks. That was discussed as a concept, but while I see picnic tables and those kinds of things, I don't see any spots where there are bike racks. So those are just a few little pieces that I was wondering about.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Post. All great questions, great observations again. First off, on fixtures in the park, such as park benches or bleachers and those kinds of things, when we actually do the actual design, detailed design for a particular area, you're absolutely correct. We would be putting in bleachers. One of the issues we have now, I think the GSP alluded to it, is the swell that's there now lends itself to putting bleachers in. Well, the berm is going to disappear. And so we're going to redesign the bleachers between where the skate trail would be, or skate loop would be, and where the soccer field is. The other thing is there's the opportunity on both the west side and north side of the soccer pitch to build bleachers into the slope versus trying to build them out in the field. And again, when you look at the baseball, there are some issues with baseball because of the close proximity of the two fields. How do we break the two fields up, and how much can we shift the fields? So when you do that, you actually factor in where your bleachers can sit, and creating it from the safety perspective for people in bleachers. And on the washrooms, one of the things we found when we got into the washroom question was that we have large space in the bottom floor of the tennis building. And quite frankly, it's not used at capacity. And our intent would be to, again, from a budget perspective, we thought there'd be an economy to scale, is we would actually modify the lower level of the tennis building to allow more washroom facilities, particularly in the winter months, and an area that's going to be warm to go in and change your skates and put on skates. And it's close proximity to the skate trail, to actually incorporate washrooms or a warm skate space to put skates on in the middle of the field, or if you would, between baseball and the skate loop, will be huge cost, bringing sewer to the area. So what we did, we would just modify the existing building where possible. And that's where actually our approach would be, and then not to have to increase the budget any more than we had to, but still get what we needed, particularly in the winter months. Summer months is not such an issue. But certainly in the winter months, we have a large season. We would need all that space, so we would modify the existing building.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Very good. So, Mr. Osmond, is a takeaway. I wonder if at our next meeting, if you could bring back some thoughts about development charges and how those might help pay for some of these improvements. So, councillors, any further questions before we vote on this? All right, all in favor of approving in principle the Rotary Park redevelopment, directing staff to bring forward plan recommendations for future budget processes, and direct staff to continue to work in partnership with Orangeville Rotary Club to begin planning the new proposed playground. All in favor? All right, thank you. Mr. Osmond, you have your direction, sir.
Thank you.
All right, folks, moving on to 12.2. This is an update on the townwide parking on one side of local streets initiative, recommendation that report INS 2022-042, the update on townwide parking on one side of local streets be received, and the council adopt the parking restrictions as outlined in Schedule A, Attachment 1 to report INS 2022-042, and the council pass a bylaw to update the current traffic bylaw 078-2005 to incorporate the parking restrictions as outlined in Schedule A, Attachment 1 to report INS 2022-042. Could we have a motion on this, please? Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Sherwood. Any comments, councillors, on this? Councillor McIntosh, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Worship. First of all, I'd like to thank staff. They've done a heck of a job on this. Obviously, I didn't drive around and look at all these streets that are on the report. I did have a couple of questions on a couple of particular streets. They seem to have time limits when you can double park, and I just wondered, like Jay Crescent, for example, there's a time limit where you can park on both sides of the street, and I just wonder what the reasoning behind that was. It just seems to me to be very confusing for the police or whoever's ticketing.
Mr. Osmond, Mr. Deleuze.
Yes, through you, Your Worship, to the Deputy Mayor. The streets near the hospital, for example, Jay Crescent, Howard Crescent, places like that, were all left particularly the same as they were prior to the initiative. The reasoning for the time limits are very simple. We don't want overflow parking into those areas as a result of visitors to the hospitals, patients to the hospitals, etc. So that's the reason why that remained the same.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a good job on the report. A lot of work went into it, and I know it's taken a long time, but I'm glad to see it finally get here. So thank you to staff.
Very good. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I guess I'd like to offer a compliment first too, and I'd like to offer that towards the Deputy Mayor. This was his initiative. This was his bringing forward, and I think it's excellent. It's something that over time I have become very aware of that it needs to go through. So I'd just like to offer you kudos, sir, on bringing this initiative forward, and to town staff as well. My question is, it's very specific, but I see that you know, the one side of the street parking, you know, with the grid and whatnot. I guess I just want to get clarification on 2nd Street and 4th Avenue. So there's no parking on both sides of the street now. Will that move to one side of the street parking? And I'm sorry, the grid is good. It's just a little bit difficult to understand. So I just wanted to ask that question if I could. 2nd Street and 4th Avenue.
Yes, through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Taylor. The initiative dealt with only those streets that didn't have parking. That did not have parking restrictions. On those streets, such as 2nd, such as 4th Avenue, the parking will remain the same if there was restriction on those streets prior to that, Councillor Taylor.
Your Worship, if I may.
Sure.
So those two streets, as I understand it, there's something historic that happened there years ago that made those two sections of Orangeville rather unique. And my understanding is that it's not necessary moving forward that it be, you know, removed. It should just be one side parking in those areas. And again, my expertise is low, but I'm hoping maybe staff could look at those two and potentially make the revision or not, if at all possible.
Your Worship, to Councillor Taylor, we can certainly look at that. We can look at that as a staff and find out what that history is, and certainly we could report back. But certainly we're not anticipating that this would impact the bylaw at this point in time.
I fully agree.
Yeah, the historical context, I understand, was the racetrack and people, you know, deciding to park out on the street rather than paying for parking the racetrack. And
that's my understanding as well. But
if that is in fact the case, Mr. Deleuze, maybe you could bring that back at a future date if you can do a little research for us. But we've had some, you know, more than one complaint from residents saying, you know, if you're going to put one side parking, let's do it. But they're affected, as Councillor Taylor has said, with both sides of the street being prohibited. All right.
Absolutely, Your Worship, we'll do that.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Taylor, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to get in the queue one more time, Your Worship. Thank you. So with this, and staff has been great, have explained this to me already as to why. I just want to bring up the point, and certainly I think we should approve this tonight, but it's the time limit piece, and I bring this up not to you know, backdoor staff in any sort of way. I just want the public to know that time limits are something that are in the works and would come back. And the reason I'm so passionate about this is now we're going to have one-sided street parking. We already know from our residents that parking is an issue. I mean, there's 4-car families in town, and I'm certainly sympathetic to that. The issue is you cannot park in certain areas for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, in the non-winter months. It's just not fair to others. And time limits need to come forward at an eventual time for all of us to consider and hopefully at some point implement. So I don't know what the timeline will be for staff, but I guess my message is to the public who are watching and the papers or whomever's going to write this up, that eventually this is coming as well for at least consideration and hopefully future implementation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship. You can see that staff has taken on quite a task to have to come through this, to do this through the whole town. And as alluded, it was impossible for us to visualize every street and how this is going to work. So I guess one of the things we have to make the people aware is this could be subject to further change. If things don't work out or they are things need to be corrected, we're open to having them corrected once we see that, because we don't live on every one of these streets to see how it's going to implement. So again, kudos to staff, but like I say, it's impossible for me to sit and see how this is going to affect every street individually. So and the fact is that none of this will even take place, like you said, Mr. Luce, till at least November, correct? So it's probably New Year likely.
Apologies for cutting you off, Councillor. Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Sherwood. That is correct, Councillor Sherwood. It's anticipated that if we get the direction tonight, that we have already started to order some of the materials for stock. We would certainly top that up over the coming weeks and start into the installation process almost immediately. We anticipate that it's going to take approximately 4 months to install signs everywhere throughout town, for sure.
And as I mentioned, as certain neighborhoods start to, experience this and maybe have some difficulties with this is always subject to coming back and just doing an amendment for specific roads if there needs to be some tweaking, correct?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Sherwood, absolutely. The bylaw is a living, breathing document that we revisit on occasion, and certainly if there's any issues that are brought forth to council and to staff, we will certainly make you aware of it. And if needed, we will bring forth another bylaw and another report recommending those changes as council directs.
Yeah, thank you again very much to staff. Really great job.
Okay, Councillor, so I guess, Councillor Andrews, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. Very quickly, just echoing what has been mentioned, a wonderful, very important report, thorough. Mr. Luce, just in regards to the communication, I know that we've had an opportunity to review some of that information in the report, but the general public, just for the sake of, informing them, just a 30-second, overview on how some of this will be communicated to the general public of Orangeville.
Absolutely. Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Andrews, we intend to engage our communications division. We intend to engage our social media platforms and certainly put out the message through those platforms, and certainly open up our phone lines, our websites, etc., to all the public, all the residents, and certainly to voice their concerns or opinions. And certainly we will take all of that into consideration and certainly document all of those concerns. And if need be, as I noted earlier, we will come back to you with a further report. And certainly if council receives those, we would certainly welcome that input from the public through the councillors.
Very good. And thank you, Councillor. Mr. DeLeese, what's the timeline for implementation of sign installations for this program?
We anticipate, Your Worship, that this will take us approximately four months. As Councillor Sherwood indicated earlier, we expect that we will roll out all of the signs and all of the parking restrictions likely by the middle to end of October, early November.
Very good. Thank you. All right, councillors. Councillor Sherwood, one more question.
Just one quick question, not that I'm trying to ask for anything to be all changed, Mr. Deleuze, by any means, but was it ever thought about doing an alternating one side to the other? I see that they focused on having no parking on the same sides as fire hydrants, which makes great sense. But was it ever discussed and thought about that, about maybe saying, okay, from the 1st to the 15th, this side, and then 15th, like, not that I'm asking for that change now, but was it ever thought out?
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Sherwood, I'm aware that some cities and some municipalities do that on a rotating basis. Those are typically on those streets that historically receive a lot of what I will call storage parking, so that they don't become eyesores. And certainly that's one of the things that we did talk about, but we thought for this initiative, the simplest way for residents to understand it was to roll it out in this method. Certainly that is something that we can look at in the coming months and years as council directs us to do so, but certainly that's one thing that we could look at later on into the future if we're directed to do so by council.
The only reason I brought it up is, you know, that people in the public are going to say, why couldn't we do the alternating staggering? And, you know, if it's thought of, fine, but I agree with this way, this implementation myself.
Very good. All right, councillors. Without further ado, I guess we'll call the vote here. All in favor? Very good. Thank you, Mr. Deleuze. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to 12.3, we have the 2021 Economic Development and Culture Report. This is report CMS 2022-015. We have a recommendation that this report regarding the 2021 Economic Development Report be received. Could we have a motion to receive this, please? Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Post. Any comments on this, councillors? It's a very comprehensive report. I just wanted to, thank Ms. Phillips and her team. Some very interesting information. Of course, we have the new Love Orangeville marketing program that is in place now, which we saw several months ago being implemented now. I noticed an increase in industrial commercial permitting over the last 3 years. We just talked about economic development with Mr. Figliuzzi from Whiteman. Lots of positive things going on in Orangeville, and thank you, Ms. Phillips, for bringing this report to us. So unless there's any further comments, councillors, all in favor of receiving this? Thank you. Moving on to 12.4, Property Standards Bylaw Housekeeping Amendment CPS 2022-050. This is a recommendation that this report of Property Standards Bylaw Housekeeping Amendment be received, and the council pass a bylaw to amend the Property Standards Bylaw as outlined in report CPS 2022-050. Could we have a motion for this, please? Councillor Andrews, second by Deputy Mayor McIntosh. Any comments, councillors, on this? All in favor? Thank you. Moving on to 12.5, the 2022 Community Grants Update, CPS 2022-051. Recommendation that the report of 2022 grants update be received, and the council approve the distribution of 2022 community grant budgeted funds of $17,000. We have a motion on this, please. Councillor Taylor, second by Councillor Post. Any comments on this motion? Councillor Andrews, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure if this would be directed to the treasurer, but in her absence, I'm wondering if someone from staff might be able to just confirm what would be the drop dead date of this particular community grant process. As we have been indicated in the report, there's only so much money available. And just in case we do have some community groups that come forward, at least they know that there is a, end date.
Ms. McKinney.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the community program for this year is for 2022. As you might recall, council enacted a rolling program that would allow people to come forward until the program is exhausted. So should these particular grants be approved, the remaining favorable variance for the balance of this year would be $5,000. Council could, of course, if it chose, increase that amount should additional groups come forward as well. In the treasurer's absence, I will state that.
Thank you, Ms. McKinney.
All right. Unless there's any further questions, call the vote on this. All in favor? All right, thank you. Item 13 is correspondence. We have items 13.1 through 13.5. We have a letter of thanks from the president of Orangeville Blues and Jazz, Josh Leach, over a very successful Blues and Jazz Festival this year. We also have interesting commentary from Orangeville Police Service over their bike purchase. We did note on Saturday at the Indigenous celebration that some of our local police officers were on bicycles, although they were borrowed, as I understand, I think from Nottawasaga OPP, but they're looking forward to receiving bikes and being on those in the coming weeks or months. Any comments on any of these correspondence? Yes, Councillor Sherwood, go ahead.
Yes, Your Worship, just to go back to the correspondence from the Blues and Jazz, I want to congratulate them on a phenomenally successful event. And I'm wondering if it would be out of line or if I have to put a motion through or whatever, but is there any way of council sending a letter, maybe staff could send a letter on behalf of council to express how grateful we were for them to host the event for the community?
Well, I think we all personally did. But I mean,
Okay. All right, then I'll do that personally then.
Yeah, or perhaps Councillor Sherwood, if you'd like to draft up a letter and bring it to the next meeting, I think we'd all endorse it for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, on the correspondence, so all in favor of receiving this? Thank you. Moving on to item 14, we have board minutes, Sustainable Orangeville Committee board minutes from October 5th of 2021, December 7th, 2021, February 1st, 2022, and April 5th of 2022. We have a motion to receive those minutes, please. Councillor Post, second by Councillor Andrews, all in favor? All right. Item 15, notice of motion prior to meeting. I'm sorry?
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Correspondence, I don't have a mover and a seconder recorded. If you wouldn't mind just capturing that once more, please,
Right.
and thank you.
Could we have a mover, please? Deputy Mayor McIntosh, seconded by Councillor Post. And again, I'll call a vote. All in favor?
Thank you very much.
Madam Clerk, for catching that. My apologies. Moving on to item 15, the notice of motion prior to meeting. Councillor Taylor, over to you, sir.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to make sure I had my mute off. The purpose behind this is not to pass anything tonight. And it's not necessarily to put my own views on council or those of the constituents that I've spoken to. But the main concern is with the noise bylaw. And the noise bylaw itself, the overall message is it's old and it needs to be updated to today's terms. I bring forward that the citizens that I've spoken to are frustrated by loud vehicles, specifically those loud vehicles that have modified mufflers. They backfire in the town, they make loud noises, they're upsetting to the residents that are in residential neighborhoods. So much so that the residents know where those folks live and there's concerns. But that's not the main gist of this notice of motion. It's simply to have us allow the clerk to go back and to update the noise bylaw. Whether or not it includes items for loud vehicles or not, it just speaks to a bygone era. And if you read the previous noise bylaw or the noise bylaw we have now, it speaks to hooting and hollering and just kind of older terms that we wouldn't necessarily use today. So my ask of council is that simply we refer it back to the clerk's department and give them the powers to relook at this bylaw and have them come back. And again, my suggestion is that modified mufflers are part of it, but the clerk may decide that's inappropriate and not any part of this whatsoever. So I leave it to council to decide what they'd like to do.
Right, I was curious about that part of your request, Councillor Taylor, because you know, this would seem to fall under the Highway Traffic Act, of which there's already provisions for the police to act on noisy vehicles. I did reach out to our OPP detachment and ask for some numbers, and I did find that in 2022 under OPS there were no charges laid. In 2021 there were 23 charges laid under OPP with 10 warnings, and in the first 4 months of 2022 3 charges were laid and 7 warnings. So I'm just curious of, you know, are you expecting our bylaw enforcement officers to deal with vehicles? And how would you suggest they do that?
Again, my overreach here is to update the noise bylaw. So whether or not it gets included, Your Worship, is something to be decided by the clerks, and they would come back and report. The genesis for this is twofold. One is it's dated. Read it, and I'm quite certain you'd agree with me that it's dated. And part 2 is that I have received these complaints. Now, in terms of the OPP, you said 2022 was OPS. It's, you know, obviously OPP. Or yeah, it's okay. The
2020
yeah,
is OPS.
Your stats are correct. There was a program last year that the OPP in Dufferin certainly tried to get off the ground. It was called Silent Runnings, and the idea was to target these modified vehicles and offer fines. If you were to speak to Inspector Ward, he would say, "Hey, we did it as a kind of a first try, and perhaps, you know, we weren't as focused or as successful as we wanted to be." And you know, as we sit here today, I don't know what the plans are for that program, but they wouldn't tell us until it got on to that program whether or not they were going to do it again. So, you know, as humbly as they could, the OPP said they could do more with that initiative. I have been out with citizens at different gatherings specific to noise, and Constable Roach, Jennifer, has spoken to citizens while I have been there, and they have been concerned about this issue. But again, I would suggest that that's a backseat issue here. That's one of the things that I would love to get accomplished, but whether it is or not, it's just, let's update this noise bylaw. Let's let the clerks, empower the clerks to do this research and see what they come back with. And if my portion that I would like in is included, great. And if it's not, that's fine too. We've updated the noise bylaw and we've moved on. And by the way, this piece that you're reading here tonight, I did work with Ms. Landry on this closely. She's been very helpful, and that's why the bottom reads as it does. And that is, hey, let's allow the experts, which is town staff, to come back to us for something to consider.
Okay, well, I personally think there's a lot more priorities than this, but anyway, for them to work on. Councillor Sherwood, go ahead.
Yes, Your Worship, I did reach out to Inspector Ward just to get clarification that those types of vehicles and noise will be enforced and are enforced by the OPP. So the general public knows that they're still chargeable offense. They don't have to wait for this bylaw to come through. My next point is, when it comes to the overall noise bylaw itself, like if say we go to loud music and stuff like that, I believe we used to have a time frame, correct, Madam Clerk, where you couldn't have it, but that's all been kind of removed. We may have to look at that again. Is that something that they were thinking of looking at as well? Because you know, you still have people say, oh, you're not allowed to play loud music in your backyard after 11, but I don't think that's true so much anymore. Am I correct on that, Madam Clerk?
So our last amendment to the noise bylaw dates back to 1996. And I don't believe as though there are time restrictions, but if you just give me 1 second. No, there are no time restrictions. It's generally the causing of noise with a few exceptions in the bylaw, but there's no time restrictions at the moment.
Which is kind of good, because there could be, you know, very bad noise during the middle of the afternoon that could be enforced, as long as it doesn't fall within the time frame. But okay, thank you very much. That's all I have to.
So just, yeah, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Just in hearing the discussion, I just wanted to provide some clarity with respect to when the bylaw is set to be reviewed. So according to the bylaw review work plan, it is slated to be reviewed in 2024. So if it is council's desire to move that up, I think we would just need some more clear direction in terms of when council expects that to be reviewed relative to the other bylaws that are slated before it.
Okay. I guess we'd have to see what was in front of that to determine that. Madam Clerk, do you have the priority available?
I do, yes. So in 2023, we have smoke-free municipal public spaces, restaurant licensing, our records retention bylaw, mobile food vendors. We're looking again at the HENS pilot program, and under infrastructure is the discharge of water into sanitary and storm sewers, and zoning. And prior to that, in 2022, it's the delegation of authority, the traffic bylaw, parks bylaw, lawn watering, and topsoil removal.
Right. Okay. Just to clarify the timing issue. So if there is a nuisance noise that is emanating right now, bylaw can respond to it regardless of the time of day. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we have a nuisance bylaw in place right now where if somebody makes too much noise, they can.
Yep, so the clause in our noise bylaw is that no person shall within the town of Orangeville make, create, cause, or permit to be made noises likely to disturb the inhabitants, except as permitted by section 4. And then section 4 talks about ringing of church bells and chimes, sounding of apparatuses, human voices, military processions, like those types of things.
Right. And do your bylaw officers have the ability to pull cars over?
They do not, no.
And does the HTA section 75 regarding noisy vehicles, is that sufficient in your opinion, Madam Clerk, for the vehicle noise issue?
Well, the HTA provides the mechanism for the enforcement of those vehicles, yes.
The only method of enforcement?
At the moment, yes.
Councillor Sherwood, did you want to ask another question, or is your hand up from the previous one?
I'm just making a comment that I will support that we readdress and maybe look at the noise bylaw and see if it needs to be updated. But I would like to stick to the current schedule plan.
Okay, very good. All right, any further comments on this? Yeah, Councillor Post.
I would just make the comment that perhaps it's appropriate, you know, with some of the discussion that we've had, that maybe the motion itself changes a little bit, where it says, you know, therefore be it resolved, and it includes the part about the noise created by motor vehicles. Perhaps that can be not necessarily included, but maybe the wording's a bit different, that it be looked at to see if it can be included or should be included, or if there's history from other municipalities who have implemented a similar bylaw. Maybe there's some work to be done just to see if that's something that's been done across other municipalities, to see if it's an appropriate addition. I definitely support it with that kind of addition to it, rather than saying that it would definitely be a clause in it. It might just be a wording change. So Councillor Taylor, I'd leave it to you on how that could be reworded.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Post. So that is my vision as well, and I'm sorry that I did word it that way. It should just read is the main thing here is let's update this bylaw. And again, if it covers off these other pieces, honestly, I'm great with that. That succeeds what I want. But the reality is, if the first mover is let's update this bylaw, I'd be thrilled, and I could drop those other pieces and let's just get this done.
Right. It's on the docket for approximately 18 months from now, correct, Madam Clerk? Mid-2024?
Yes, approximately.
Yeah.
2024, so which quarter it falls into or which half of it, that would depend on how the other ones progress, but as it stands right now, it's 2024. And just with respect to Mr. Mayor, if I could, just procedurally. So because this is a notice of motion that was provided prior to the meeting, the motion does need to be moved and seconded for any amendments to happen as per Councillor Poe's suggestion. So if it is the wish of council to make those amendments and move it along, if the original motion in its state could be moved and seconded, and then a mover for the amendment.
I'm just going to ask Councillor Taylor, I'm wondering, we have another meeting in a couple of weeks. Do you think you could reword it and bring it back, and then we'll rush it through at that point? Is that reasonable?
Sure.
So taking the vehicular component out of it.
Sure.
I think.
Would you, if I did that, Your Worship, would you support that?
Absolutely.
I would be pleased to do that then. Thank
All
you.
right. So let's move on then. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. All right. Any notices of motion at meeting? Seeing none. Any new business, councillors? Councillor Andrews, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to provide what I hope is a 60-second update on the 236 First Street Committee and the development of the supportive housing in province activity. For those of you on council and the community are aware of the former motel, things are progressing. The committee actually met just prior to council tonight. And just to give you a very quick update, things are delayed a little bit. The target was to, in fact, have occupancy of this facility by the end of this calendar year. Due to supply chain issues, it looks as though that it will be in the first quarter of 2023. The plan itself will include 4 accessible units, fully accessible, as well as studio apartments. The design itself, you will be able to see probably in about 30 to 60 days time. There will be some new signs that will be put up on the exterior of that location, which is the construction fence, which will also include a QR code that will take you directly to the website, as well as some visuals, so that the general public will have an understanding of what the interior but the exterior design is. Very pleased to see that they are on target, at least from a financial perspective, and also appreciative of the executive that is with SHIP. They have communicated with some of the concerned residents of that area, which also fall outside of Orangeville proper. But things are looking good for what is defined as affordable housing units within our community. So if any members of council have any questions, I'd be happy to respond. But at this point, that is the very quick update that I have from that committee.
I've got one question, Councillor Andrew. I sure recall that there was a banquet area in the middle of that facility, and they were going to fit that out for offices.
That is correct.
We're going to have permanent full-time staff during the day there. Is that correct?
That is correct. Part of it will be some administrative, but also staff that will be available 24/7. At least that's what the intent. And some of the renderings and modifications they've made to the floor plan does accommodate that. So again, what I would suggest to members of council and the general public, the website will have, in fact, has already, from a soft launch perspective, some design that is really reflective of the needs, but also from an operations perspective too, as well, as you make reference to it here.
Right, and I see Councillor Sherwood has lit up her screen, but I was going to ask if any of the play area that Councillor Sherwood had brought up, because there are going to be children in this building. Can you share with us, Councillor Andrews, if there's been any talk of that?
Yes, in fact, at tonight's meeting, the discussion was to take a look at the land that is just behind the building itself, Your Worship, and Councillor Sherwood. And I know that there is still kind of a phased-in approach, so there is going to be somewhat of a play area. They are working with the landscape architect that is part of the project to kind of figure out the timeline for that. With occupancy, and they were hoping to avoid the cold fall and winter period, but some of this will be in place by, it is hoped, the spring, early summer of 2023.
Very good. Thank you. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship. I was going to discuss another item. Did any of the other councillors have anything further to ask of Councillor Andrews before I go to the next item?
Looks
like
yeah.
Looks like we're good.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, you know, this isn't my initiative by any means, but I just wanted to remind the general public that this Friday is Canada Day, and we're going to be back in having some celebrations at the Alder Street Arena, starting at 11:45 to 8 p.m. And there's going to be some great things happening there for families. So hopefully we can have our community come out and enjoy some of the live performances, and you know, get some face painting and see magicians and whatever, and have cake. And I look forward to seeing my fellow councillors there as well.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Sherwood, for that reminder. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Just a real quick shout out to the Orangeville Legion, who are also having Canada Day celebrations. Opening ceremonies, I believe, are at 2 o'clock on the 1st. So just a shout out to them. Thank you.
Yeah, I understand they had a Cracker Jack party over the weekend too, with a taco truck and some music. So good on them. All right. Any further new business? No. Madam Clerk, anybody from the public wishes to ask a question of council?
I will just defer that question.
Or Ms. Forman-Cherry?
Through your worship, no one on the line.
Okay.
There's no one on the line currently.
Very good. On to item 19. This is a recommendation that the bylaws listed below be read 3 times and finally passed. A bylaw to amend the traffic bylaws 78-2005 to establish no parking on local streets within the town of Orangeville. 19.2, a bylaw to amend bylaw 2022-21, being a bylaw prescribing standards for the maintenance and occupancy of property. And 19.3, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Orangeville at its closed and regular council meeting held June 27, 2022. We have a motion for those bylaws, please. Councillor Taylor, Councillor Andrews, second. All in favor? And a motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Taylor, Deputy Mayor McIntosh, all in favor? All right, folks. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Hopefully we'll see you Friday.
Take
Yeah.
care.
Have a
all.
good
guys.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye now.
Happy Canada Day. Bye-bye now.
Yes.